Let me tell you something that'll break the way you think about attraction. The most magnetic men, the ones women remember years later, aren't the loudest, the richest, or the best looking. They're the ones who make a woman feel something she can't quite explain. While every other man is trying to impress her, these men are doing something different. They're awakening her. You've seen it happen. Two men talk to the same woman. One cracks jokes, compliments her, floods her with attention. The other just listens, asks a few questions, and somehow she can't stop leaning toward him. What happened there isn't luck, it's psychology powered by presence. Because here's the brutal truth. Attraction isn't built through performance, it's built through contrast. While most men rush to fill silence, the high-value man uses it. While others chase validation, he triggers curiosity. And curiosity, when mixed with calm, masculine energy, is irresistible. Today, I'm going to show you 5 flirting questions that create that magnetic effect. But make no mistake, these aren't pickup lines. They're psychological keys that unlock something deeper in her mind. When you ask them with the composure of a man who knows his worth, she'll feel it instantly. Because the truth is this, when a man learns how to make a woman think, he never has to beg her to feel. We live in an age of noise where everyone's trying to be heard, trying to prove something. Men compete for attention through clever texts, flashy lifestyles, or overconfident flirting. But what actually makes a woman crave a man's presence isn't noise, it's stillness. Flirting isn't about being smooth, it's about creating depth. You don't attract through memorized lines, you attract through grounded curiosity. Every question you'll learn today has one purpose: to make her drop the mask. Because once she stops performing, the real connection begins. There's a reason Stoic men seem so mysterious. It's not because they hide who they are, it's because they're not trying to prove who they are. Their calm is rare, their focus disarming. When you combine that stillness with emotionally intelligent conversation, you flip the entire dynamic. You stop chasing and she starts chasing the feeling she gets around you. So listen carefully, because these 5 questions will change the way you flirt forever. You'll start an awakening. Question 1. What do you think people misunderstand about you? Every woman carries a version of herself that the world doesn't see. The polished smile, the playful tone, the controlled confidence, all of it is armor. Armor built from years of being judged, underestimated, or put into boxes she never chose. Behind every calm woman is a storm no one bothered to understand. And that's why this question, what do you think people misunderstand about you, cuts through noise like a blade. It's not a question most men have the depth or composure to ask, because it's not about flirting, it's about inviting her truth. Most guys stay on the surface. They compliment, they tease, they perform. But a woman's real desire doesn't awaken in noise. It awakens in silence. And when you ask her this question with that slow, grounded tone of curiosity, not need, she feels something shift inside her. Her guard starts to lower, not because you forced it, but because you earned it. Psychologically, this question activates what's known as the disclosure response cycle. When someone opens up about how they're misunderstood, they access vulnerability, and the person listening becomes emotionally linked to that release. In other words, you make her feel seen in a way that most men never have. And the one who makes her feel seen becomes the one she can't stop seeing. Think of Jason, a quiet graphic designer I once coached. For years, he thought women weren't attracted to him because he wasn't loud or assertive enough. On one date, instead of trying to impress his date with clever lines, he simply asked, "What do you think people misunderstand about you?" She went silent, caught off guard. Then she said, "People think I'm confident, but I'm actually anxious most of the time." Jason didn't interrupt. He just smiled softly and said, "That's kind of beautiful, though. The world sees strength, but you know the cost of it." Her eyes locked onto his in a way he'd never seen before. That night they talked for hours, not because of chemistry, but because of connection. That's the power of curiosity without agenda. When you stop performing and start exploring, you shift from trying to be chosen to inviting trust. The average man talks to impress, the rare man listens to understand, and women can feel that difference instantly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, more the truth." Remember that line every time you talk to a woman, because when you ask this question, you're not fishing for an answer. You're showing that you know truth is subjective, that people are deeper than appearances. You remind her that she's not something to be judged, but something to be discovered. But here's the warning: this question only works if it's grounded in presence. If you ask it out of curiosity but can't handle her honesty, you'll lose her respect. You must hold stillness, even if she opens wounds. That's what makes it powerful. She feels that you can witness her pain without trying to fix it. And that's where the masculine essence lives, not in solving, not in seducing, but in seeing. Because a woman might forget the man who flirted with her. She might forget the man who made her laugh, but she never forgets the man who made her feel understood. Ask her what people misunderstand about her, and you won't just start a conversation. Question 2. What makes you feel most alive? Most men talk to fill silence. The rare man listens to find truth. When you look at a woman and calmly ask, "What makes you feel most alive?" you're not just asking about hobbies or thrills, you're asking about the pulse of her soul. The modern world has buried people under distractions. Endless scrolling, constant noise, cheap dopamine hits that trick us into thinking we're living. But deep down, everyone knows the difference between existing and feeling alive. When you ask her this question, you pull her out of that fog. You give her permission to remember the parts of herself that the world has numbed. Psychologically, this question taps into the dopamine recall loop, the brain's mechanism for reliving emotional highs. When she recalls a time she felt truly alive, her brain releases the same chemicals she felt in that original moment. But here's the secret. She now associates those emotions with the person who triggered the memory. You. That's not manipulation, it's resonance. You're not making her feel good through performance, you're helping her feel herself again. The Stoic man doesn't use this question to dig for data. He uses it to awaken energy. He doesn't say it with a smirk or as a pickup trick. He says it slowly, with curiosity, grounded in presence. Because when your tone carries peace, her mind starts to open. I remember Alex, a quiet engineer who once told me he never knew how to flirt. He thought flirting meant witty banter or confident teasing. But one night, sitting across from a woman on a rooftop bar, he simply asked, "When do you feel most alive?" She looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Honestly," she said, "when I'm traveling alone. No plans, no phone, just me." Alex didn't rush to reply. He just smiled slightly and said, "Freedom suits you." She laughed, but not in a superficial way. In that moment, something deeper clicked. Why? Because that question reminded her of who she was beneath all the noise. And that's the secret most men miss. Attraction isn't about you, it's about what she feels about herself in your presence. Seneca once wrote, "Life is long if you know how to use it." Most people waste their years chasing pleasure while starving for passion. When you ask her what makes her feel alive, you're challenging her to confront that truth. You're leading her inward. And leadership, in the emotional sense, is the core of masculine magnetism. You see, the average man talks about surface pleasures. The Stoic man talks about inner fire. When she answers, you don't interrupt. You don't tell your own story. You hold the space, because that silence, your calm, steady presence, is the flirtation. It tells her that you're not desperate to impress. You're secure enough to let her reveal herself. There's a psychological term called emotional contrast theory. It says we feel emotion more intensely when it stands against calmness. Your stillness amplifies her passion. When she talks about what makes her feel alive and you listen quietly, Her energy dances against your groundedness. That's polarity. That's the invisible current that creates tension, desire, and trust all at once. Ask yourself, when was the last time someone truly asked you what makes you feel alive and actually listened? Probably never. And that's why this question hits different. Because in a world obsessed with talking, the man who listens becomes the rarest drug there is. Flirting isn't about entertainment, it's about awakening. When you can awaken emotion in a woman without forcing it, you become the calm in the chaos, the gravity she orbits without even realizing it. So the next time you look across the table, don't ask where she works or what music she likes. Look her in the eyes, pause for a heartbeat, and say softly, what makes you feel most alive? And then do the hardest thing a man can do, say nothing. Because in that silence, attraction starts to breathe. Question 3. What kind of moments do you never forget? There's a difference between pleasure and meaning. Pleasure fades, meaning lingers. When you ask a woman, what kind of moments do you never forget? You're not asking for her favorite memory. You're asking for the blueprint of what her soul finds valuable. Most men never get this deep because they're too busy impressing. They don't understand that the most powerful kind of flirting isn't sexual, it's spiritual. It's when you make her recall something that shaped her, something that still carries emotional weight. And in doing so, you make her feel that memory again, right there with you. Psychologically, this taps into the emotional recall effect. When a person remembers a strong emotional experience, whether joy, pain, love, or loss, the same neural pathways reactivate. The brain replays the emotion, not just the memory. That means as she speaks, she isn't talking about her past. She's reliving it, and your still, attentive presence becomes the container that emotion flows into. She unconsciously connects that emotion to you. There's a kind of sacred tension in that, because most of her life, people listen to her stories to respond, to top them, to compare, to give advice. Almost no one listens to feel. The Stoic man does. He doesn't rush to comment or to fix. He lets silence do what words can't, because silence is respect in its purest form. I remember a client named Mason. He was on a date with a woman who seemed guarded, polished, professional, someone who didn't reveal much. In the middle of dinner, he leaned in slightly and asked, "What kind of moments do you never forget?" She laughed nervously, then paused. After a few seconds, she said, "The night my dad surprised me at graduation. He was sick, but showed up anyway. I didn't even know he'd left the hospital." Her voice cracked. Mason didn't interrupt. He just held her gaze and said quietly, "That sounds like a kind of love that stays with you." That line, simple, unforced, changed everything. She wasn't crying because of the memory. She was crying because she finally felt safe enough to feel. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Time is a river of passing events, and its current is strong." That's exactly what this question reminds her of. Life moves fast, but emotion is what anchors us. And when you guide a woman back into the moments that shaped her, you're helping her touch something timeless. But here's the key. Don't turn this question into a trick. Don't ask to manipulate emotion. Ask to witness it. Because once a man sees the beauty in truth, unpolished, unfiltered human truth, he stops needing games. The Stoics understood this. They knew that depth requires courage. It's easy to impress someone. It's harder to hold space for their pain. There's a concept in psychology called emotional mirroring, the ability to reflect another's emotion without losing your own calm. When you do this well, you create intimacy without chaos. You become the eye of the storm. That's where a woman feels both safe and stirred. And that combination, safety and excitement, is the definition of attraction. Ask her about the moments she never forgets, and you're asking her about the truths she lives by. You'll hear stories of loss, love, laughter, pain, and each one will reveal who she really is beneath all the social masks. Don't interrupt. Don't overreact. Just listen with stillness, because in that stillness she'll feel something she rarely feels with men today, presence. And here's the paradox. When a woman feels safe enough to be emotional around you, you instantly become dangerous to her heart. That's the power of this question. It doesn't make her think about you. It makes her feel you. Question 4. When do you feel most feminine? Most men are terrified of polarity. They've been told for years to soften their edges, to be safe, to be agreeable. And they can't understand why the women they chase never feel drawn to them. But attraction is built on contrast, not similarity. Masculine and feminine energy are like the sun and moon, different but perfectly balanced when aligned. That's why this question, when do you feel most feminine, is one of the most powerful things a grounded man can ask. Because it does something that few words can. It invites her to step out of her armor and back into her nature. In modern society, most women live in their masculine. They're hustling, planning, achieving, competing, constantly in motion, rarely at peace. When you ask her this question from a place of genuine curiosity, she feels something she hasn't felt in a long time, permission to relax. And that's the exact moment attraction begins. Not when you make her laugh, not when you compliment her looks, but when your energy silently says, you can exhale here. Psychologically, this question activates what's known as the gender polarity response, a deep subconscious recognition between masculine and feminine energy. When your tone is calm, your eyes steady, your posture unshaken, her nervous system mirrors yours. She moves from tension to trust, from control to openness. You become the mountain, and she becomes the river flowing toward it. Take Daniel, a 35-year-old doctor I once mentored. He told me he'd been stuck in shallow conversations for years, endless small talk that went nowhere. On one date, after dinner, he simply asked, "When do you feel most feminine?" She blinked, caught off guard. "No one's ever asked me that before," she said, smiling. "Probably when I'm dancing, or when a man makes me feel like I don't have to think about everything for once." Daniel didn't flirt. He didn't brag. He just nodded, smiled softly, and said, "That's what femininity deserves, peace." That night, she looked at him differently. Because he wasn't trying to seduce her body, he was awakening her essence. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny." When you accept feminine energy as sacred, you stop trying to control it. You lead it gently. You understand that the power of the masculine isn't domination, it's direction. You create the container that allows the feminine to move freely, emotionally, beautifully, without fear of being judged. That's why most men fail at connection. They mistake control for leadership. They talk over women, interrupt, or over-explain to prove strength. But true strength doesn't shout. It holds. It's the calm that gives chaos meaning. When you ask this question, you're not performing dominance. You're simply being, and your stillness speaks louder than any charm ever could. It says, "I'm not threatened by your softness, I'm drawn to it." That message resonates on a biological level. In her presence, you stay grounded. In your presence, she softens. That's the ancient dance. Yin and yang, stillness and motion, logic and feeling. She's not surrendering to you. She's returning to herself because you made it safe to do so. So when you ask, when do you feel most feminine? Don't rush to fill the silence. Let her think. Let her smile. Let her remember the parts of herself she's forgotten. Because in that pause, something electric happens. She feels the rarest thing a woman can feel today. Relaxed attraction. Not forced, not hyped, not performative, just natural. And she'll remember you not as the man who wanted her attention, but as the man whose energy let her breathe. Question 5. What do you want to be remembered for? Every man and woman, no matter how distracted by pleasure or chaos, carries a quiet question deep in their chest. Will my life matter? Most never confront it until it's too late. But when you look at a woman and ask, what do you want to be remembered for? You force her to step out of the noise and into the mirror. It's not a question about legacy in the grand sense. It's about essence. You're asking her, who are you when no one's watching? And that, more than any line, compliment, or joke, creates a gravity that she can't escape. Most men are terrified of silence. They fear heavy questions. They think flirting means making her laugh or teasing her just right. But the men who truly awaken women are the ones who make her reflect. They lead her out of performance and into presence. Because real attraction isn't about adrenaline, it's about awareness. Psychologically, this question triggers what's known as the future self-concept, the part of the brain responsible for meaning and long-term identity. When she answers, she's not talking to you. She's talking to herself through you. And if you stay calm, grounded, and fully present while she does, you become part of that reflection. You become the stillness that her future self looks back on. I once worked with Ryan, a man who never thought of himself as charismatic. "I'm too straightforward," he said. But one night, walking home with a woman after dinner, he asked this exact question. She laughed, then looked away. "That's a big one," she said. He shrugged. "Take your time." A moment passed before she spoke again. "I want to be remembered for making people feel like they mattered." Ryan didn't reply right away. He just nodded, then said softly, "Then you already are." There was no cleverness in it, no manipulation, just presence. That sentence hit her deeper than any compliment could. Because it wasn't flattery, it was recognition. She saw herself in his calm reflection, and that's what stayed with her. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." When you ask this question, that's exactly what you're doing. You're embodying presence, purpose, and peace. You're not entertaining her, you're elevating her. You're not trying to win her approval, you're inviting her to look higher. And that's the paradox of masculine energy. The moment you stop trying to be desired, you become unforgettable. See, every woman has met the man who flirts for attention. Few have met the man who flirts through intention. The man whose calm forces her to confront herself. When she leaves the conversation, she's not just thinking about you, she's thinking about who she was when she was with you. That's why this question lingers. It's not about romance. It's about remembrance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you help a woman touch her highest thoughts, her soul takes on that color, and she forever associates that hue with you. That's not game, that's gravity. So when you ask, what do you want to be remembered for? Don't fill the silence that follows. Let it breathe. Because that silence will feel like something holy. She might smile, she might look away. She might even say, "I've never thought about that before." But trust me, she'll think about it later. And in that quiet moment, long after the conversation ends, she'll realize something powerful. You weren't just another man flirting with her. You were the mirror that helped her see herself. And the man who does that, the man who connects a woman to her purpose, becomes a memory she never escapes. There's a truth most men spend their whole lives avoiding. You don't attract women by chasing them. You attract them by mastering yourself. Every word in this conversation, every question, every pause, every breath has been about one thing: presence. The art of being grounded in a world of noise. The strength to lead a conversation without dominating it. The calm that says, "I'm enough as I am." Because the truth is, most men talk to fill silence. Stoic men talk to deepen it. Every question you've learned in this video. What do you think people misunderstand about you? What makes you feel alive? What moments do you never forget? When do you feel most feminine? What do you want to be remembered for? They all do one thing. They return the world to stillness. And that's where attraction is born. It's not in the performance. It's not in the jokes, the gestures, the words. It's in the rare, quiet confidence of a man who no longer needs approval to exist. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." That's the essence of masculine magnetism. It begins within. You see, women aren't drawn to men who talk the loudest. They're drawn to men who make them feel safe enough to whisper. They're drawn to the man whose eyes don't wander, whose presence doesn't flinch, whose questions pull emotion from places she didn't know were still alive. Because the modern world is starving for depth. Everyone's addicted to instant attention, constant validation, cheap entertainment. And in that chaos, the man who is calm, who listens, becomes an anomaly. He's the storm's opposite, grounded, unmoved, real. When you become that man, every conversation changes. You stop seeking reactions and start creating resonance. Women begin to feel something rare when they talk to you. Peace mixed with intrigue. They won't describe it that way. They'll just say, there's something different about you. That something isn't mystery, it's mastery. Stoicism teaches that we don't control others, only our own mind. Attraction obeys the same law. You can't make anyone love you. You can only become someone love naturally gravitates toward. And when you do, when you embody presence, curiosity, restraint, flirting stops being a game and becomes a form of art. Ask yourself this: how many men does she meet who can stay silent while she speaks about something real? How many men can meet her emotions with stillness instead of insecurity? How many men can let tension breathe without trying to fix it? Almost none. That's why the man who can is unforgettable. You become the memory she can't shake, the calm after every storm. So remember this, brother, the questions themselves don't create attraction. Your presence does. The tone in your voice, the unhurried breath, the steady eye contact that tells her you're listening, not to respond, but to understand. That's the energy of the Stoic flirt. That's the man women can't forget. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Freedom in this context means freedom from outcome. You ask, you listen, you let it unfold. You don't push for more. You don't fear silence. You don't chase validation, because a man anchored in peace is already full, and fullness attracts. Flirting is not about control. It's about connection. And the deepest connection starts when you finally stop trying to prove your worth and instead reveal your peace. When you master that, when you can carry stillness into any room, any conversation, any silence, you don't just attract women. You attract respect, loyalty, and calm. You attract life itself. Because every woman, deep down, is looking for one thing: a man whose peace can't be stolen. If you felt something awaken while listening to this, if you caught yourself breathing slower, thinking deeper, then you already know what's next. Comment below calm is magnetic, because it is. Presence is the new power. Depth is the new charisma. Subscribe, brother. Join this circle of men who are done chasing and ready to start leading. Men who speak less but say more. Men who understand that attraction isn't earned through tricks. It's commanded through stillness. Every time you show up as that kind of man, you remind the world what real masculinity feels like: patient, powerful, peaceful. So guard your mind, strengthen your silence, ask the questions that matter. Because when you master your presence, you won't need to pursue women. They'll find peace in you and follow it.